Thank you. Honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what USAID is doing to strengthen education and to work on improving research capacity across Africa. So USAID is the United States principal development agency, and because of that, we work across a range of different sectors. And so the interesting piece that comes away from that is that we can see a lot of the synergies that we get by working across sectors. So if we work to develop ICT infrastructure, we see that that helps us achieve our goals in education. As we move towards achieving our goals in education, we see that that has benefits and payoffs in health, in security, and in economic development. Now, I'm going to focus mostly on ICT and education today, but I want to frame that in the overall context of our goals in education. And so the amount of money that USAID has been investing in education has been increasing over the years. In the year 2000, we were investing just over $100 million in basic education. In 2010, that increased to over $900 million, with an additional $200 million devoted to higher education activities. So the trend is good, at least for those of us who think that education is an important part of achieving the rest of our development goals as well. And there's a lot of evidence to support this. Studies have shown that education is linked to improved earnings, to decreases in child mortality and other good outcomes in health, and to improvements in security. So based partly on that, and due to the additional funding that USAID has been devoting to education activities, we've also been doing more thinking about how to use that funding more effectively. So one of the products of that has been the USAID Education Strategy, which came out close to a year ago and focuses on 3 specific goals. The first is improved reading skill for 100 million children in primary grades. The second is improved tertiary and workforce development programs. And the third is increased access to education in crisis and conflict environments. Now, I want to focus first on what we're doing in primary education. So one of the ways we're approaching this is through our Grand Challenges for Development. And in our Grand Challenges for Development program, we're articulating specific challenges in different areas of development, aiming to remove critical barriers to development progress and to facilitate innovative approaches, especially those based in science and technology. And in education, that basis in science and technology primarily means ICT. The second thing we're doing with our Grand Challenges is to encourage a wide array of non-traditional solvers to focus their attention on developing these solutions. Developing solutions that are shown to be effective, that are scalable so we can reach millions of people, and that are sustainable. Now in education, our Grand Challenge is called All Children Reading, and its goal is to ensure that any child who has received at least 3 years of schooling is able to read. And we're doing this in 2 ways. So the first way is funding. So we're issuing competitive grants in order to take innovations from the field and move those to scale. And the second is convening the community around this challenge. So not only around the grant recipients through All Children Reading, but also others who are in this field, so that we can convene innovators and we can convene other partners. And the way we're doing this is through our Mobiles for Reading Working Group. So the Mobiles for Reading Working Group is a perfect fit for this Grand Challenge in primary education, but it's also part of a larger effort. So it's part of the M-Education Alliance, which is an international collaborative effort where we're bringing together a number of different types of organizations with a focus on being able to better use mobile technologies. And when I say mobile technologies, I mean not only mobile phones, but also e-readers, tablets, Pico projectors. Being able to use those mobile technologies to support improvements in education. Being able to increase the awareness of those mobile tools and mobile technologies. The M-Education Alliance is working to convene practitioners, to convene funders, and to explore opportunities to jointly fund new activities. So this is a relatively new group. You can see on our website, meducationalliance.org, some of what we're doing. The website will be officially launched in February. We do welcome additional partners into the Alliance, and in fact, we're going to hold a symposium this summer in Washington. Now, so that gives you one example of what we're doing in primary education, how we're using science and technology and ICT in primary education. So now I want to turn to higher education and workforce development. And if you look at the USAID education strategy, which you can do on our website if you're inclined to do so, and you look at what it says about university engagement, there are a few focus areas. So one is improving public-private sector collaboration. Another is supporting the expansion of applied research. Faculty and staff training through joint collaborative research is another. Now, here are a few examples of some of the activities we're involved with across Africa. I don't want to go into too much detail on these, but I want to talk instead about a new program that we're launching that's focused on developing research capacity. Now, part of the impetus for that is an increased emphasis on science and technology at USAID that's happened recently. So I'm now in the Office of Science and Technology, which is a relatively new office. We now have a USAID administrator who seems to really be a true believer in the power of science and technology to deliver and improve on development goals. And it's easy to see why. If you look at the history of development, there are a number of examples of great breakthroughs that have come from science and technology. Oral rehydration therapy has been credited with saving millions of lives. The Green Revolution resulted in dramatically increased yields, agricultural yields. Cell phones, of course, have been used in education, in banking, and are a key part of infrastructure. Now, partly as a result of this and to foster such innovations, we're developing a new program that's jointly run through the Office of Science and Technology and through USAID's Bureau for Africa. And the vision of this program is that researchers and scientists across Africa should have access to the best current knowledge in their fields, and they should be enabled as they exchange ideas with their colleagues, both at home, in their home countries, in their home institutions, and abroad. So why this emphasis on knowledge exchange? Well, science is about ideas, and specifically it's about new ideas, new ways to do research, new ways to think about the world around us, new ways to tackle the challenges that all of our countries face every day. And a key part of being able to do good science is being able to communicate, to share information, to share those new ideas. And so in order to enable that knowledge sharing so that we can do good science that is responsive to the needs of the host government, science that is collaborative, science that is based on the newest thinking in these fields, we are moving forward in this project. Now, fortunately, we're not alone. We're not the only organization that thinks that this is a worthy goal. And in fact, there are national, university, regional ICT initiatives that acknowledge the importance of sharing information, being able to communicate more easily. There are research universities, higher education institutions across Africa that have collectively resulted in the publication of tens of thousands of scientific journal articles each year. And next to the efforts of organizations such as IFL and INASP, Research for Life in the United Nations, many of these universities and research institutes have free access to thousands of scientific journal articles. Now, unfortunately, there are also significant challenges that remain. So, for example, internet access is expensive, it's slow, it's unreliable in many places. Many of the students and the researchers are not aware of the resources that are available to them. If you go into a university and interview people, you'll find that oftentimes someone will say, well, it'd really be great to have access to this particular journal or this particular resource, but we don't have that. When in fact, they do, they just don't know where to find it. And in addition to that, access to resources is not as complete as it could be. There's access to many journals, but not all of them. There are gaps in the coverage due to some of the programs I've mentioned. Regional journals are often not covered as easily. Government reports, course materials are often lacking. And in addition to all of that, even when a student or a researcher knows what resources they do have access to, what resources they want to seek out, often the search technologies and user interfaces are slow, they're difficult to use, and they can create additional barriers between the researcher or the student and the ideas that they want to have access to. Now, we're working to implement this vision, and there are several components that we believe are necessary to move forward. ICT infrastructure is one, so we're working to leverage cyber infrastructure initiatives to support the research community. We're working to build user-friendly interfaces, user-friendly technologies that will allow easier access to the online resources that many universities already have. We want to provide wider access to these resources, including journals, including government reports and course materials. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we want to boost the human capacity. We want to increase awareness of the resources so that when a university is paying for a particular subscription or for a particular resource, or is going to the effort to deliver that, that people know about it. They know to go out, they know to use it, and they're able to turn that into to research that gets out and informs their colleagues. Now, across all of these components, an important aspect of making sure that they have an impact is sustainability. So making sure that the results of this program, the benefits, are around not 2 years, not 3 years, not 5 years, but in perpetuity is important. And so part of that is working with government ministries, working with higher education institutions, and private sector stakeholders to make sure that there is long-term local ownership. Because that is critical for making sure that this actually has as much of an impact as we think it can. So USAID is working with Gloria to implement these components. Gloria is an organization that's funded by the US National Science Foundation and has been working to strengthen and build scientific communities for the past 10 years. They've been working through building cable networks and building national research and education networks to do this. And as we move forward, there are a number of discrete but overlapping steps that we're going to have to take. First is really assessing the needs that are out there. So in our pilot countries, assessing what are the current resources that are available, what's the state of the scientific community, what are the ICT infrastructure initiatives that we can leverage to move forward. As we pilot in the first few countries, we'll be measuring the results as we go, assessing the impact through user evaluations, assessing what impact eventually we can have on publication rates, on the ability of researchers to collaborate with each other. And eventually we'll be taking that information and using that to scale up this program. So moving into new countries, increasing the number of users, adding resources, adding partners to make sure that this is both sustainable and has a high impact. We've selected the East African region as our initial focus. Our team just got back from spending a few weeks doing initial assessments in Rwanda. We'll be going to Kenya next. Tanzania and Uganda will follow soon. And as we move forward and determine where else to move the program, the emphasis is going to be on where we can find the potential for the highest impact. And the parts of that will be prospective partnerships with government, partnerships with the private sector, and looking for the synergies that we can get with existing initiatives in ICT and providing information and research resources. So I've given you a couple examples of what we're doing in primary education as well as in higher education and how we want to use ICT to achieve our development goals. With that, I'm going to leave it there and just say that I'm looking forward, and we as an agency are looking forward to everybody who's in this room and with others who are in this space to make progress on the goals that we all share. Thank you.